Did you guys get the questions?
We did.
Okay, great. So I do not need to facilitate. I'm happy to if you'd like me to, but if somebody wants to take the lead. Don't you all talk at once now?
I think everybody's on mute except for you and me.
Okay.
So just my first thoughts in looking at question 1. This is Peep. Good morning, everybody. It looks like we're looking for the criteria that help us ID what communities have been hardest hit. And the first things that came to my mind are it's low income communities and how do we define those? And the second would be essential workers at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about essential workers, 8 meetings ago. That wasn't on our list.
No.
I think it also, it depends on, and I agree with Pip. I think it depends also because I have been working with food workers and service workers. I mean, there's a big strata of people who have been at the heart of getting essential services out to people who are hurting. And those happen to also be folks of color who are doing delivery, cleanup, service, and they really are taking the brunt in terms of dying from this and their family members and whatnot. So I think we have to be very specific about what we mean by essential workers, because I think by and large, those service workers, those people going in and cleaning up the rooms that folks with COVID have had, those people taking out the trash, serving food, making food deliveries all over town, they have not been recognized. They don't have protective equipment. They don't have any of the assurances. And I just heard a agricultural worker and also several people who have been working in food service that they don't have health benefits. They don't get overtime pay unless they've been working 50 hours. I mean, that is the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to put out there undocumented workers, those without insurance, those that are experiencing domestic violence, are homeless. Our homeless rate has gone up, has increased. It's ridiculous. And we can't forget those that are, 2 weeks away from bankruptcy. Our indigenous communities, my Navajo people are begging for water, literally crying, begging for water. I think that's, something that we should really focus on.
Can you expand on the begging for water part and where, I mean, that's something I haven't heard of yet, so I want to understand.
Yeah, I can share an article with you all. Actually, our Navajo people in Arizona, there's a specific reservation where they have no access to clean water. They actually haven't for quite a while, and what they would have to do is they would have tankers, or they would have tankers come in and distribute their water. But because of COVID, they're not able to get access. And what happened was a lot of reservations close off the borders, so that they,
I thought you were talking about people here.
Oh, so, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just speaking overall as indigenous people.
Sorry.
No problem.
I think the interesting piece of this COVID is that when you look at the essential workers, you've got such a wide range of people at all different socioeconomic levels, all different backgrounds, all different education levels, right? That are out there, doing the great work to make the rest of us that are staying at home feel safe and protected. I also think the economic impact, though, is going to be somewhat the same as far as the diversity, right? Meaning that not that the people that have lost their jobs that are in, you know, kind of a lower income are not hit harder. That's not what I'm saying. But again, at the you know, when you look at the people who have lost work filing unemployment, I think that range is different too. And I think that that's one of the things with this crisis that's unique from just a financial crisis in the past, is when you look at that, you know, diversity of the population that is affected in different ways. And granted, you know, lower income people of color are obviously hit harder in a lot of ways, and we're seeing that with, you know, the statistics coming out of them, you know, who are experiencing COVID at, you know, at greater rates of percentage. And how do we start figuring out what continues to be the reason that happens, when, you know, education and some of these other things seem to be always discussed, but where is the break from the conversation to the action? That's the part that I just constantly, and I was a teacher in a formal life.
Well, then,
I just never understood how that, in all these years, right? I left teaching in 1997, and we still have not bridged the gap of, you know, of that. And so why is the answer?
I don't want to get into a like a debate about this, but I'm going to go back to folks that I've been listening to. If you can't get online, if you don't have a computer in your household, in the past 15 years, I have worked in the Northeast section with folks of color, and it has not changed. It's about 30% that have access to all the technology and cell phones, access to internet, but it's not higher than 30%. And so you can ask, as a teacher, everybody who's been forced to go online, and the folks that they have to pay the most attention to is they're having phone calls, right, and one-on-one in that way. And so that's why I keep raising this thing about, yeah, it's great if you can access a computer to make a claim for unemployment. It's great if you can access Zoom and be able to deal with that across the board, but it's not across the board.
Well, because the challenge now, right, is the resources that we tried to put in place in the past to mitigate some of that, meaning, you know, libraries and obviously let's take schools out of it right now, but even those places for them are now closed, right? And so we weren't prepared for that. And so, but yet again, that's why I'm saying it's like you've been talking about it for 15 years. I still it's like, I just have not understood where the gap is. I mean, I feel like that we've talked about we've had these conversations, and I'm just confused as to why we can't fix it. It's frustrating, right? I think all of you feel the frustration, I hope, is what I'm trying to say.
Definitely.
So what do we do? I mean, what is the action? We have to have an action, right?
Right.
This is great. This is Grace. I feel like maybe one thing that we're not saying, I don't know, you can all tell me if I'm wrong. I think that a larger global societal reason why we haven't solved these issues is we put a lot of the responsibility on the individual. That's just how our society in the United States is built. And we expect that individuals will find their way out, right? They will find the resources that they need. They will make their own lives better. They will be incentivized internally to do better. But what we have done, of course, also as a society, is we've made that pretty impossible to do when you're starting from a point where you don't have the library, you don't have the school, you don't have the job that gives you, discounts and benefits that you can get those internet resources, and we've priced them out. So, which is completely, I don't know if it's separate from climate, but is certainly a foundation of our society. And then when we look to these questions we're supposed to answer, which is what are the criteria? I think a lot of us here in this conversation, we're ready to have a much more radical approach to how we rebuild our society and economy after, coming through this crisis. But it is much bigger than just the issues that we are looking at. And I wonder, and again, I'm only still wrapping my head around this and our role in it as well. But I think that is something that I look at in the rebuilding of our society and economy, is where do we start moving that line between our societal responsibility to each other and the individual's responsibility to participate. And right now, I think that our economy has been built very much on towards the end of the spectrum, which is mostly individual and less societal responsibility. I think we have to get more towards the center. And I don't know, maybe our climate work can contribute to that.
So
I know I'm not supposed to say too much because I'm not actually on the task force.
No, you're fine, Grace. Thank you for that. I just want to be conscious. I think we only have about 5 minutes left, and then we have to go back to the big group. So given that we are being asked to develop criteria, is one of the pieces of criteria, to Grace's point, that we want to look for things that are shifting. I'm just summarizing here, but is it shifting from individual responsibility? We really want to prioritize taking it away from the individual's responsibility. Is that one of the criteria maybe that we want to prioritize?
And I think specifically, I think what this has taught us is that we have to ensure as a society that everybody has access to the tools that they need in order to receive the information, to receive the, whatever it is that we're trying, when I'm looking at this, they don't have the tools to have their kids educated at home. They don't have the tools to understand what they can do best to protect themselves when they're out. You're still in the grocery stores and seeing people not wearing masks, right? So I think that how do we get those tools to them to ensure that as we're disseminating education around climate change, that they're able to receive it too. I think that that's part of the challenge, is we haven't given them the tools that they can have.
This is Grace. I think I could give an example, actually. So when we look at, when we were talking about, I think one of the councilwoman was mentioning earlier, and we all know how much our air quality is improving because we're not commuting. But going forward, as the economy recovers, we will be able to commute again. But if we had a smart city system, right, if we were to invest in, global Wi-Fi internet access for all, that was all over the city, then we would enable many more people to be able to not commute. And so that's a climate-related investment that solves multiple issues, right? It enables kids to learn from home. It enables parents to, who might not be able to now, to work from home. It might enable more jobs to be able to be remote. So perhaps just, again, getting to the point of how we're trying to solve or look at criteria, I think there's something about the co-benefits, right? And again, enabling those activities that we want to support, like more people being able to work and learn remotely.
You said it better than I could. Thank you.
Nice.
I would love to hear from Pip, Veronica, Michaela, Julie, others on this committee.
Just listening to the conversation and thinking about question 1, I thought we identified some of those areas. Basically, the focus on service workers. So I don't know if that's minimum wage level service workers and the issues with their ability to have healthcare supports, unemployed, undocumented, homeless. And then the second issue that we really clearly are calling out is those who are unconnected.
Yeah, and I know that I heard that, even those people that are being detained, I don't know, if you're being detained and someone's sick, people who are detained in ICE, but I don't know how jails are dealing with this as well. I really don't know. And I don't know if how are those people, if I'm going in healthy, but there's sick people in there, I have to stay there. So that's something else that maybe we should also put down.
So how do you all want to describe those as criteria? to relook at your solutions, right? So I have the shift away from the individual, like that it's not just individual's responsibility when we go to look at solutions, right? So we're not going to prioritize those. And then prioritizing solutions that give people the tools they need in order to make these kind of choices to support reducing carbon emissions. What is there a third criteria around we want to ensure it helps minimum wage frontline? I just want to capture, I mean, somebody else can present it, but I'm trying to capture it for us.
Yeah, I think it is, as Pippa said, the service workers, but it's like service workers, delivery people, you know, all those people who get stuff to those who have the resources. I mean, I hear from, and it's such a contradiction right now, I hear from certain friends that have the means that they get stuff delivered to them all the time and don't think twice about the folks who are dropping it off on the doorstep or taking it out to the vehicles and getting the delivery, you know, driven out. It's, as I said, people who clean, who pick up trash, who deliver food, who grow the food. And
I think, I'm sorry to cut you off just because I know we're running down,
Yeah.
but, you know, just kind of trying to, you know, it's true, you know, we will need deliveries no matter what. So, you know, maybe as looking at climate change, maybe we should, you know, kill that bird with the stone of like, okay, deliveries really should be EV vehicles, you know what I mean? Kind of making that maybe a criteria. And also you were mentioning food, like how can we talk about food industry and make that something more climate change friendly?
Yeah.
Because we're always going to need food. So these are two items that maybe, you know, we might still be able to work with what we still need and, you know, create jobs as well. What kind of jobs would that be?
Sorry, just a thought. I'd like to focus a little bit on households where they have to spend over X percent of their household income on the two biggest, which is housing and transportation. So there's a metric there. When you have to spend over X percent of your household income on paying your rent and getting around, that I think could be one that helps identify which families need the most support.
Okay, Sam and Craig and Katrina, this is going to be pretty lonely if it's only Mr. Tuxedo and I here.
We've been mighty but strong this whole time.
Yes,
I was going to compliment Mike on his dapper appearance this morning. It's very impressive.
Thank you. It was really inspired by this woman on Twitter who said she just wore her wedding dress to lunch with her kids.
Oh, that's nice.
But I did realize I have like a happy hour later today that this will be perfect for us. I just have to power through for like 5 hours in a Texas. But
Seems
yeah,
like
I mean,
a small hurdle to get to a happy hour.
Yeah. Just an update for the group. I asked where Johnny is because he's been such an important member of this. Apparently, he's been deployed to the jail, so he will not be able to join us at least for the immediate future. Which I think is for our little electricity team, which is pretty small to begin with, is going to be, we're going to take a loss. But that's the update on Johnny.
Yeah, he's actually on the 1:30 a.m. to 10:30. He has to cook and do meal prep.
Wow.
40 hours a week.
Well, Katrina's a new addition to our subgroup. Katrina, you want to introduce yourself and say hello? We welcome the input.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
We can.
I can start my video also. I don't think, so it's lovely to see all of you. I am back from maternity leave this week. So I think you may recall we corresponded some back in January when I helped set up the task force. I lead the buildings work for Denver. So I actually just shot Jacob an email because I think I'm in the wrong breakout. I will be helping with the buildings work, not the renewables work, but I can't do that myself. So I'm probably not in the right place, but it's lovely to see you and nice to be back. And if there's ways I can be helpful because Johnny is out, I am city staff. I do know something about renewables, but not nearly as much as you all and Johnny.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'd love to see you welcome back from maternity leave.
Yeah, congrats on the new one.
Thanks.
That's right.
Are you sleeping through the night? No, too early to sleep through the night yet, right?
We get 6 hours in a stretch most nights, which is pretty good
That's
for a
great.
3-month-old. I'll take it.
That's
Yep.
really
Yeah.
good.
You're
That is sleeping through the night, I think, by definition, up until like 5 or 6 months.
I think that's right.
Yeah, if you're getting 6 hours uninterrupted, I am not getting 6 hours uninterrupted because of professional worries and my brain not shutting off. So
yeah,
I don't want to compare the tough work you're doing, but 6 hours straight sounds awesome.
It's plenty.
Wonderful. So would you all like me to guide to share my screen with the Trello board, or Sam, do you?
No, Marcel, if you could, normally I would, but I am outside on a very small device. So if you actually could drive, that'd be great. And then
no problem.
Discuss. Yeah.
Let me get there. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I didn't know what group I was going to be in, so I hadn't pulled up my Trello board yet. Okay. Okay, so do you all understand what we're trying to do, right? So we need to go through and kind of given, again, this is not necessarily what ultimately based on public feedback and all the considerate stuff that's going on, but this is that part of the report that's going to say, if there's stimulus for economic recovery, here are some of the solutions that we would prioritize based on the criteria though, right? So we don't just want to randomly pick some things. We want them to be addressing the criteria that was discussed in the first breakout, and then it will support economic recovery. So does that make sense? So you all know this board way better than I do. Is there a place you want to start? Do you want to start at phase 1 and just go through them, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's start at phase 1. I mean, Marcel, just some quick feedback, and Jacob heard this on our last, but I was really impressed with the way Jeremy framed this for everybody out of the gate. So really well done in teeing him up. This space in particular, and I'm going to kind of dive right into rebates and some other things, because I think that's really what we're looking at in the immediate term here. This space, there's a lot of lessons learned from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act effort kind of during the last crisis. And so Mike, Craig, I know you guys are both kind of in the business then too. I don't know if we want to start there and think about what worked and what didn't kind of through the lens, because it's really what I think we're looking at here in the most immediate term in our group.
I mean, the thing that worked last time was immediate point of sale disbursement of any incentive or any bill credit or anything. That worked considerably better at getting projects built and people employed, or people giving them work to do, than some of the more complicated kind of, as you mentioned, tax issues or getting even refundable tax issues. So anything that we've got here that deals with expenditure of cash, it's got to be at that point of sale. Otherwise, it really just gets all. It really just ends up the folks who are best able to navigate a bureaucracy get the money. So that was the big. I mean, that was the big takeaway from the green investments. There is this was also mentioned, a lot of focus on job training and not focusing on the jobs, and I think we've created the one thing that I think that really is awesome that's come out of this work is the czar, the clean jobs czar, or the energy jobs czar, excuse me, and that really is going to do that connecting between existing expenditures and the industry need. and figuring out how to make that work rather than just spending more money on trainings. And then there's the longer term stuff, but it's way less sexy. And that's we spent a bunch of money on R&D for solar in 2008, and we all heard about Solyndra. It was a big deal. But Tesla also got launched in 2008, and so we have cars and batteries that wouldn't have existed, but they took a decade to come around. And I just don't know if right now we're in a place where there's going to be, given what we say 15% cuts in the Denver's budget, that there's going to be a lot of appetite for long-term investments. Although, if we can think about how to do that in a way that prioritizes the long-term investments within the communities that we've traditionally left behind, and many communities we've identified, maybe that's an argument to do so. I mean, changing a neighborhood's infrastructure has long-term, impacts and oftentimes long-term benefits. So those are the kind of, from the solar kind of storage, green investments that were made in 2000, I guess the money kind of started rolling at the end of 2009, early 2010. Those are the three big takeaways.
So, okay, so I heard expenditure of cash at point of sale, the energy jobs are, and then I kind of missed there's something.
Well, the third one is like, and I don't know if we really get into this too much, but just the longer term investments that really change infrastructure. They're slower to get started. They don't create quite the wow impact, but they do have the chance to make, significant long-term impacts. And I think in the Denver context, it's a case of, are we, for example, cleaning up the brownfields and cleaning up the waste, the wastelands that exist throughout our Denver metropolitan area, and turning those into some sort of, clean energy or green energy or, whatever development. But that's going to take, it'll take you 2 years to get through the EPA process before you'd even start putting anything on the ground. And I don't know what kind of appetite folks have for that sort of thing. But changing a brownfield into a park and solar, installation does wonders for neighborhoods and more importantly for home values in the neighborhood. So that's the third element. And I just, for as far as lessons learned from ARA.
Okay.
Yeah, I was part of a small renewable company at that time, and we had the opposite experience of the Solyndras and Teslas. We were overwhelmed by the bureaucracy and unable to really capture any of those dollars. And so Jeremy's comments about getting dollars people need it most really strikes a chord with me, because sort of lived through that. That's actually how I ended up taking a job in the oil and gas sector, because I couldn't get another renewable job when we shut down our renewables division in 2009. So I think we're in a tough spot here with kind of the immediate term solutions, because I am personally heavily swayed by this notion of getting dollars to people to get them back to work. And I'm not sure really what we can do in this space in the immediate term to do that. And maybe I'm not thinking creatively enough, but.
What about this one here, the support and expand programs for solar installation, training, and job placement? Is that not, do you not think?
That goes, Mike, you got to jump in here, but that goes to the focus on jobs, not job training that,
yeah, that's fair.
that he talked about. Really, there's no training people to go into jobs that won't exist is going to be a problem. And I cannot stress enough. I am blessed at the moment to have an economist on staff. And have been given some amazing presentations on this demand shock. And I kind of played a little Jeopardy game with the team last time on, how much demand was down in air travel and stuff. But it's so much more serious than it was even when we talked 2 weeks ago. And we really don't see the bottom of it. And so, I really, training people for things that won't exist is not going to be helpful.
Yeah,
okay, that's fair. So
it's going to be hard to when we're cutting the budget by 15% to expand this. All the first items, solution one here, are all expenditures by the city to support various programs, and they could all be done. They could all be applied at the point of sale. That would definitely create jobs for for my guys, whether it's going to keep existing folks on the job or have them expand. Up until February, you know, we were adding a job a day every day for about the last 18 months. So there is opportunity here. Also, I think solution 4 deals with Denver's municipals. Where is it? Maybe it's 5, infrastructure, right? And so, you know, there's the possibility for these items, if prioritized, could inspire, you know, more market solutions. So if, for example, require municipal facilities to achieve net zero carbon, all you would need there is the city of Denver to put out an RFP and ask the market to provide solutions. You know, Johnny's already working on, I think, the second bullet. He's got an RFP that's mostly baked, my understanding. You know, his baking work at the prison notwithstanding. So those are elements that, if put out, and if the city were to fast track that, there's the potential there. The downside is you could get caught in a shit ton of bureaucracy, and it could take a long time.
Well, and even more importantly, if the city has dollars to spend, I mean, this goes back to thinking seriously about what this demand shock is. You've lost more jobs than you created over the last 10-year period. How is the city going to prioritize the dollars to save people? And when I say save people, I mean literally save people. And it's probably not going to be, you know, municipal infrastructure projects. Katrina maybe can jump in here as the city rep, but I mean, I feel like for those that are immediately suffering, if significant dollars went into a program like that, the outcry would be tremendous, which is, you know, I can't survive. I can't feed my family. Why are you putting money into municipal upgrades right now?
Right. No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. These are going to be tough. You have to say basically, we're going to spend the money now, and it's going to save us tax dollars later. Yeah. But it's going to be tough when people are like, I just fucking need to pay rent.
Yeah.
You know, like, give me a place, give me my rent, help me with my rent payment. Yeah. And so I agree. I mean, I think we had laid out many of these phase 1 solutions were based upon the expectation that we would have a surplus of you know, dollars versus now a cut. So.
Yeah.
So are you guys going back to the group to say that there might be other solutions in other buckets of work that need to be prioritized over electricity supply because you don't?
I mean,
with the caveat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, but unfortunately, the easiest carbon wins are here. You
Right.
know, Excel is partnered with the city and with many of the citizens to do this. They have internally reorganized themselves to focus on this. So you need carbon wins and you need them now. This is where you spend your money. I know transportation's sexy, but it's slower than snot, right? The fleet will take a decade to turn over. It is crazy to think people are going to jump on public transportation right now. So, I mean, we have to go back to the group and say, you want easy, you know, bankable carbon wins. The electricity supply is probably where you have to invest. But we're going to invest here, and that means people won't get help with their food, or people won't get help with their rent. We're literally going to put people out of their homes because we're going to do this. Now, that might be a utilitarian, you know, Jeremy Bentham would be very pleased. You'd say that the good of everybody on aggregate is greater than the suffering of the few. I just don't know. This group doesn't feel especially utilitarian to me, right? So I just don't know if this group wants to get behind it. So I think that's I don't know the answer here, and I'm not a politician. I don't even want to be one, but that's the decision that has to be made. You know, we heard the council members say, we need to make these investments now because the impact is compounds. Well, this is what you do. You spend money on point of sale rebates. You spend money on net zero municipal facilities. But it's costly in humanity and probably in politics.
I totally agree with what Mike said. It was well said.
I do too.
Yeah.
This is Craig. I think Sam and Mike, you've been capturing so much of what I've been thinking. And I'm the new guy, and I'm also a short timer because I believe Tyler returns next week. I
No.
don't, yeah, well, I don't want to, presume that I should have such a large role in charting the course of this process when I haven't been involved all that long. But it just seems to me that when you start a voyage, as this great task force had done, and then you drive into a hurricane, which is where we are right now, you kind of look at your priorities and you say, well, which ones can we jettison, or at least, not concentrate on and focus on while we're trying to get through this hurricane. And I don't feel like this plan is acknowledging that we are in a crisis and that all of this stuff might end up having to be ditched in, as a trade-off to the basic survival of our population. And I'm not saying that you just take this whole plan and throw it away. No, but where do you add in? Here are the things that we feel like we want to concentrate on now, and here are the things that we feel like we can just put off until we're out of this hurricane.
Well, here's the really stark reality from a cost perspective. I mean, the demand shock here is going to make dirtier fuels extremely cheap in the short term. And as in the city of Denver, and gas in particular, but the city of Denver thinks about, or any entity, where am I going to get some cost savings right now?
Yep.
It's actually going to be energy, because there's such an oversupply that the prices, there is no elasticity. What makes this crisis very different in the commodity world is we are increasingly convinced there's not going to be any elasticity, meaning there's not going to be a snapback in prices. There's going to be a prolonged, when I say prolonged, I mean we're talking years long, oversupply to the point where, it's going to be like when we were in high school and you could fill up your tank for, 50, 60, 70 cents a gallon.
Right.
So, how are you going to, if you're weighing kind of these existential threats to your population and you have an opportunity for a cost savings, how do you say no to that in lieu of more expensive alternatives?
Yeah. How do you talk about strategy that has always worked, which is to increase the cost of the dirty fuels to make them look less attractive than the clean fuels at a time when, as you said, Sam, the dirty fuels are as cheap as they've ever been. And knowing that if you just add a tax, a carbon tax or whatever else you call it, to people's bills, all that does is raise the cost of their energy. It really is going to be hard to see that they're going to acknowledge that as an incentive to do something better.
But if we do, I mean, this gets, Craig, so Craig, first of all, your analogy is so spot on. This is a voyage. We're in the midst of a Category 5 hurricane, and we're not even like in an especially seaworthy ship, or certainly maybe the ship's seaworthy, but the crew is freaking ad hoc. So
we got a smart crew, man. Our dinghy may be a little unprepared, but we got a smart crew.
We do have a smart crew, but my experience at running the engine room has been a little limited at this point. I mean, it is tricky, right? Like one option would be to say, if we want to make the right, the right thing, the easy thing, then yeah, we need to put a carbon tax or some sort of tax in on dirtier fuels. But that has the impact. The other thing that really sucks about this is that you really want to employ 15,000 people tomorrow. Go do energy efficiency on every home in Colorado, in Denver that hasn't been built in the last 20 years. Guess what you can't do right now? Put a bunch of people in everybody's homes.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, I would scrap this whole plan. If you said I need 15,000 jobs, the answer is windows and insulation and weather stripping in every home in Denver. That saves everybody immediately money on their utility bill. Sorry, Craig.
Yep.
But I'm all for decoupling, so you can get paid anyway. But then you put a bunch of people to work. We just can't do that right now because we'll kill people if we do that.
Actually, Mike, you may be selling yourself a little short. That's actually not. I mean, there are mechanisms you could put in place to protect people while still perhaps deploying those resources. Actually, maybe that is our addition for the group in terms of sort of an immediate return in our space. Actually, I think about our garage door springs broke, and we had a guy come out and he was wearing a mask, and everybody took precautions, and we social distanced, and he fixed our garage, and the garage are open again. So actually, I'm not sure it's as dire there in terms of getting people to
I
photos.
would tell you, you know who's not out of business right now is lawn care workers. They're
Yeah.
all construction. I mean,
Yep.
my neighborhood is full. Tree cutters, like they wear masks and I mean, it's,
Yeah, I mean, just crawling around someone's attic is a little bit of a different deal. But I mean, I'm happy to, you know, in solar, we say the first thing you should do is go make your bill the smallest you can, use the least amount of energy, and then supplement that energy that you do have to use with solar. So maybe that is what we go back to, but it puts a lot of people to work pretty quick, and it's a relatively semi-skilled job. Window replacement's one thing, but frickin' rolling out insulation, you know, it's like 2 days training and telling people not to eat it. So I'm, you know, my members may hate me for this, but that may be what we say. And you know what? If we want to do this, then we can go back and clearly prioritize the Black and brown communities that we've screwed over forever. The communities.
Yeah, you'd start in the, you know, Globeville communities that you know, least can get through the bureaucratic process to get, you know, the energy efficiency programs out. I think that's our low-hanging fruit, Mike. I think you were selling yourself short.
okay. So when we go back to the big group, Mike, is that going to be your proposal that it's a new, it wasn't on your board, but you're going to, if we get stimulus in order to jumpstart, it would be to immediately do energy efficiency upgrades, prioritizing hiring low income and minority populations to do some energy efficiency upgrades. And who would pay for those upgrades then?
Xcel Energy rebates.
Well,
okay.
and your stimulus money.
Yeah, I'd say in whatever money the city's going to get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Can you type that up?
Yeah. God, I hate putting that on paper because my members are gonna frickin' hang me. But that's the right thing. That's the right thing to do. I'll do this.
You can private chat it to me, and then I'll put it to the larger group.
Yeah, no, do that. I mean, Marcel, maybe you can just speak on behalf of.
That would.
You have three members in interesting places here. Maybe you can just speak on behalf of the group, Marcel.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Did I get it right though?
You did. I'll chat it to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could be a fig leaf on this one, it would be, I think, a little more helpful for my internal politics.
That's fine.
I really hate this, but I have to jump on another call, but I'm going to be listening in. I just want to join, but you have my full support.
Thanks,
Craig. Thanks, Craig. On behalf of Excel, so don't worry about it.
It was actually Craig's idea.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, and so how it'd be paid for is rebates through companies like Excel, but also through stimulus dollars could be spent there.
And I would add public-private partnerships there.
Public-private partnerships.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you see these entities that are making donations in COVID relief to help get people back to work. I mean, this would be one where I would say, let's get the public-private partnerships involved too.
Yeah, and I think where that works out is that so the city of Denver could handle those public-private partnerships and minimize bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And
okay, you're going to private chat this to me though, so I don't.
I'll private chat to you. Okay. And maybe we make it open that you could add solar as well, but that would be an additional thing.
Do it. Give it. Mike deserves it.
Do it, Mike. Do it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, you guys.
All right. I'll